Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Information on how to watch, attend, and participate, as well as agendas, minutes, recordings, they can all be found on Broomfield's website at broomfield.org/council meetings. The public may also participate in public comment either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, the neighborhood, and agenda item the caller would like to comment on. If you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you'll have to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 have 2 minutes, and if time remains, the next 26 plus participants in the queue have 1 minute to speak. For those who wish to make public comment on the Village of Westview item this evening, there is a sign-up sheet located in the lobby. It's not required, but we are going to be using that list along with the list of those calling in to determine the order of the speakers. We'll hear from 6 in-person individuals, then 1 phone caller until we hit these limits. Priority will be given to those who indicated they are Broomfield residents on the sign-up sheet. Non-residents will have a chance to speak if time remains after Broomfield residents have made their comments. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available in the back of the council chambers from our AV team. The City Council regular meeting is called to order. Council members Marsh Holshan, Delgadillo, and Ward are attending remotely. A quorum of the council is present. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. We'll plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for a meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Councilmember Marsh Holshan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove 6E from the consent agenda.
Thank you. Item 6E will be reviewed as the first item under action items. Are there any objections to this agenda being approved as modified? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. The only item under petitions and communications this evening is a proclamation declaring November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday in Broomfield. Will the representatives here to accept the proclamation please come and meet Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf at the podium. I'd like to thank you all for joining this evening, and I'll summarize the proclamation, then I'll turn it over to you guys for comments. This proclamation recognizes that Broomfield celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy, and continues to support our small businesses through efforts like our Enhanced Broomfield Forgivable Loan, Entrepreneur Microgrant, Eat Local Restaurant Guide, topical workshops, and local holiday deals webpage. While Small Business Saturday is endorsed by a number of public and private entities, public and customer awareness is still increasing. This day is a critical day for many small businesses as it increases awareness of local shopping and dining options. Last year, Small Business Saturday accounted for $17 billion in spending, and the American Express notes that 59% of respondents to their 2023 survey said they shopped at or ate at a small, independently owned retailer or restaurant on Small Business Saturday last year. Research found that 68 of every $100 spent at a small business in the U.S. stays in the local economy, and that every $100 spent at a small business creates an additional $48 in local business activity. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday in Broomfield, and encourage all residents to support our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and make our community the thriving place we enjoy. Thank you all so much. Would our representatives like to make any comments?
I'll just go ahead and introduce folks accepting tonight. It's Sue and Dennis with Bouquet Boutique. Wonderful retailer here in Broomfield, and we'll just give them a chance to speak. And then Pat Monticelli with the Chamber is also here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Schreier. It's okay. We're just neighbors.
I have to stand on this, I'm
Yeah, you
short.
can.
I just want to say thank you for supporting us, small businesses. My mom started the business in 1972, so we've been here for 52 years. And of those 52, my husband Dennis and I have owned it for 40 of those years. And we're just so honored to be part of this community and all your support. So we really appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great story.
Good evening, Mayor Castriata and city council members and city staff. My name is Pat Monticelli, and I'm the president and CEO of the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the chamber, I want to thank you for proclaiming the 30th of November as Small Business Saturday. Your recognition shines a well-deserved spotlight on the hard work, resilience, and dedication of our small business community. I want to point out that businesses with 24 or fewer employees make up about 80% of our Chamber of Commerce membership. So I truly believe that they are the backbone of Broomfield's economy. By declaring Small Business Saturday, by recognizing Small Business Saturday, you're showing your commitment to fostering an environment where local businesses can thrive and continue creating jobs, supporting families, and building a vibrant community. This proclamation reminds us that we can and should empower our small businesses and uplift these businesses, helping them succeed for years to come. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Monticelli. Would anyone like to comment on this item? We allow public comment on every agenda item. So if you'd like to be heard on Small Business Saturday, you have an opportunity to speak. I don't see anyone on the phone. I'll move to council. Any questions or comments from City Council? Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm reaching over some food here. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. I really appreciate hearing from small businesses and also our local chamber. I love working synergistically with the community and our chamber. It does a really job. Just had a breakfast with the chamber this morning with some other local small businesses. So if you aren't a member of the chamber, please be a member of the chamber. They do really good work, great networking. And I'm going to be a little bit partial here when I say this. You guys are my favorite flower boutique in the entire, probably US. We were a military family for a long time. And many times we needed flowers for people. And you guys have bent over backwards for our family, even in situations where we needed a flower situation for my son for prom. And you know how boys don't really plan. I love them to death. And you guys really pulled forward and pulled through. And is your dog still in your... Did he die? Oh, I'm so sorry. I know. Okay, I'll bring something happy. Maybe we could bring our dog in and say hi. Does that sound good? His name is Baron, and he'd love to meet you all. But I really appreciate your business and your small business for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? For the good of the cause. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And everyone, let's shop small this Saturday. Thank you. On the 30th, sorry, it's a little soon. But that too. Thanks again, y'all. All right, before we begin the council member report section of the agenda, I wanted to announce that the City and County of Broomfield is participating in a Precious Gift Toy Drive this season. The program runs from November 11th to December 13th, and the city will have collection bins set up here at the George DeSiero building, the library, the Health and Human Services building, and both of our rec centers. Please consider donating and helping to provide gifts to children who would otherwise go without. You can find a list of high needs items on A Precious Child's website at apreciouschild.org. We also invite you to get into the spirit of giving to help Broomfield families celebrate special holiday meals with their loved ones by supporting Fish's annual turkey and ham drive. They're working really hard toward a goal of collecting 1,000 turkeys, and I hear they're still about 600 short. So we've got to call on everybody to try and get some hams or turkeys over to Fish by December 20th. You can drop off donations of frozen turkeys and hams at the Fish Building at 6 Garden Center during their regular hours, or you can make a financial gift by visiting their website at broomfieldfish.org. Together, we can make sure that everyone has a chance to celebrate the season with hope. So thank you all for indulging me on that. Always trying to help our nonprofits. Any other council member reports or updates this evening? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I want to share about an event that we had here this past Wednesday. We had a member of Friendship Force reach out to us regarding the Open World program. And this is an exchange program that is sponsored through the United States Congress. And what they were looking for was Turkmenistan has been noted as having some of the highest number of super emitters in the world. And they were looking for just some help in better understanding what they could do. And they picked Colorado and really focused on Denver and specifically picked Broomfield. And so they were here on Wednesday. They had 5 members from Turkmen Gas and Turkmenabit Oil, and also their member of parliament and a very, very well-versed technical interpreter who was very helpful in the language barriers. Just want to share quickly that Turkmenistan is a country in Central Asia, which is slightly larger than California and has a population slightly larger than Colorado. And they're covered that already. Their main export is oil and gas, and they were really here to learn from us. And I want to say a special thank you to Ryan Resch with the Broomfield staff, who is our specialist in oil and gas. Councilmember Lim joined me. And also, we were very fortunate to have Brent Buck with Ajax Analytics and Detlev Helmig with Boulder Air here. And we were able to, we spent a couple hours in the council chambers. They were super, super appreciative of the information that we were able to share with them. It will guide them in their endeavors as they meet their climate goals. And then we're able to take a tour of the Boulder Air Soaring Eagle site and also take a walk to see some of the operations. And so that is it. I just want to quick share that they left some gifts with us, including a plaque. So we can, if we have a place to put that, we can certainly put that up. And they were positive we'll make the Ashgabat news. So, all right, so that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Lim.
I attended the Colorado Counties Acting Together Fall Retreat on November 7th and 8th as the Broomfield alternate to CCAT. The focus was on the governor's November 1st budget proposal, and we also heard from Rep. Byrd of the JBC and Polis administration officials on their thoughts on the budget. Level 1 priorities within each group were presented and confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor. The Broomfield Resettlement Task Force has partnered with the Rocky Mountain Sports Club and Rocky Mountain Martial Arts, which is a veteran female-owned business in the Front Range, to give and create a giving tree, making it easy for everyone to give to our Broomfield refugees. Join us on November 17th, which is this Sunday, at the Rocky Mountain Sports Club for food, conversation, and celebration as we light our tree, decorated beautifully with tags outlining gifts that can be given to support these families we have welcomed into our community. You can grab a tag, register, and give the gift that never stops giving, sharing our abundance with those in need. And we will have actually a lot of those people that we serve in that party as well. So they're excited to meet everyone in Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hinkle. Any other council member reports or updates? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward. Next is general public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters other than the items already listed on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to be heard on anything other than the agenda, now's the time. Make your way to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
My name's Larry Hardwin. I live in Red Leaf near 136 in Sheridan. I was recently in the lobby when I saw someone that I recognized talking with City and County Clerk Clemens. I said hello and that I couldn't place her. It was City Attorney Nancy Rogers. She told me she didn't remember my name either and said, "But I know you're the HOA guy." I laughed as well, and I'm happy to say that I'm not here today as the HOA guy. I also enjoy working with the Broomfield Election Office. Deputy Election Manager Parker, Election Manager Norman, And election operations coordinator Millsap are excellent in their role, and they really are a pleasure to work with. And a special shout out to Yuju and Jen, who helped prepare material for the judges to use and greatly helped the election run smoothly. I was an election supervisor in the foyer of this building for 12 of the 13 days it was open for voting. While the vast majority of people vote by mail, many people enjoy voting in person, and some voters need assistance, and we provide it to them. We have Colorado Blue Books available to assist voters, and the books are widely used when voting. Many voters would receive their ballot, walk to a booth to vote, spend 5 minutes, come back out, grab a blue book, and go finish voting. The Blue Book is viewed as a very good source of information. The question I received most often during the election was, is there a Broomfield Blue Book? A Broomfield book equivalent in style and content to the Colorado Blue Book would be widely appreciated based on my interactions during the election. My proposal is for Broomfield to adopt a law that would produce a blue book for Broomfield issues that are on the ballot using procedures similar to those used to write the Colorado State Blue Book. The book would greatly help everyone's understanding of the ballot questions and increase the satisfaction of voters who will have more information available to cast their ballot. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hardaway. I too got that feedback, so we'll make it happen. All right, anyone else?
Hello, I'm Jesse Applegate from Country Estates. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. As I'm sure you're aware, our current president-elect has made several promises that threaten the livelihoods of some of our most vulnerable community members, specifically through his plans to repeal the Affordable Care Act and Social Security. As a result, a great deal of our folks are now put at risk. I would implore you then to take all appropriate measures in conjunction with our neighboring communities and state government to limit the damage that this decision could do to our community and population. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? I don't see anyone online, so we'll move on. We'll now continue with the report section of the agenda. City and County Manager Hoffman, do you have any reports?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Rogers, do you have any reports this evening?
I did remember your name a second later, but you're right. So I do apologize, Mr. Hardaway, and I will not remember your name again. I don't even see where you sat now. If you, so thank you. And I just wanted to echo, thank you to everyone who worked on elections. It was very, very smooth.
Thank you. All right. Moving on, council's consideration of the consent items is next. Earlier this evening, Councilmember Marsh Holshan requested that item 6E be moved to the action items. Therefore, it will not be reviewed at this time. The clerk will read all of the consent items by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Item 6G is a Board of Equalization item. As a reminder, council is the Board of Equalization, so a vote by council on this item is also a vote of the BOE. Item 6K is Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of resolution number 2024-155-UR. Therefore, we will convene a meeting of borough. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order to consider agenda item 6K concurrently. I'll note that all members of the authority are present with the exception of Authority Member Law Evans. The clerk will read agenda items 6A through 6D and 6F through 6K by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council borough comments and questions. Will the clerk please read agenda items 6A through 6D and 6F through 6K by title?
Approval of minutes from the October 22nd, 2024 regular council meeting. 6B, resolution number 2024-133, approving an agreement with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for the replacement of tasers, body-worn cameras, and redaction software. 6C, resolution 2024-152, approving the construction manager general contractor agreement by and between Broomfield and Maltz Construction, Inc. for the Sunridge Lift Station Site Application and Rehabilitation Project. Resolution number 2024-153, authorizing and approving a consulting agreement between Broomfield and Burns and McDonald Engineering Company, Inc. for the Sunridge Lift Station Site Application and Rehabilitation Project. Resolution number 2024-141, approving the renewal of an intergovernmental agreement with Adams County for Community Correction Program Services and appointing Broomfield representatives to the Community Corrections Board. 6F, resolution number 2024-51, approving a master license agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and Metro FiberNet LLC. 6G, resolution number 2024-117-BOE, approving hearing officer recommendations on abatement petitions. 6H, ordinance number 2250, establishing the Wadsworth Station Reimbursement Assessment District and assessing the benefited property therein, first reading. 6I, ordinance number 2240 to add chapter 17-71 to the Broomfield Municipal Code to establish tree preservation and mitigation measures during land development and redevelopment, first reading. 6J, resolution number 2024-142, ratifying the election by the city and county of Broomfield to participate in the group financing for Windy Gap firming project completion cost. 6K, resolution number 2024-155-UR, authorizing the replacement of the remarketing agent and approving an updated remarketing agreement related to the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority tax increment bonds, Broomfield Event Center Project Series 2005.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in-person. If you'd like to speak on any of the items that she just listed on the consent agenda, now is the time. Check online. I don't see anyone online, so now we'll move to, does any member of our council or the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority have comments on these agenda items or questions? Councilmember Lim or Borough Member both?
I have quick questions on 6C, I, and J. So 6C is the Sunridge Lift Station. I looked at the contract. It says it should take 1 year from the beginning of construction to be completed. Is that an accurate estimate or is that a worst case? And when the postcard is sent out to the residents, will it give an estimation of the timeline of the project?
Is that Ms. Allen or Mr. Rutt? I see Mr. Rutt making his way down to the podium. Director of Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Manager Hoffman, Ken Rutt, Director of Public Works. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Lim. Correct, is 12 months is the projected construction timeline. Given any supply chain issues, but that is the construction timeline and the expectation. Most construction is very reliable and pretty consistent on their timelines.
Will that be on the resident postcard? Or?
Yes, we'll put that on their postcard, the
Okay.
expected timeframe.
Thank you. 6J on the ratifying the Windy Gap firming project. I wasn't clear in reading that. Will council receive notice of future increases in group debt, or do we just have to look at the enterprise budget to see what the expenditure is per year?
I'm not even going to bring Mr. Graham down to answer that question. Councilmember Lim, I'll answer that question. Any financing related items regarding Windy Gap will be included in the quarterly updates, not only from our public works teams, but specifically relating to any enterprise changes, surprises, modifications, or what's next.
Okay, good. Then the 6I, the tree protection code. It refers to the payment in lieu of mitigation. It refers to the fee schedule found in the City and County of Broomfield Landscape Reference Manual. I looked in there and don't see a fee schedule at this time. Is it anticipated later? And I guess I have concerns about it being anticipated later and approving this, that we're not seeing it, because council and ACES were, we all expressed some concern that the fees would encourage tree replacement and not the payment in lieu.
It is going to be anticipated to be put into the landscape reference manual. It's not at this time. And as discussed with ACES and previously, the intent is to have the cash in lieu be the last option. And the fees are going to be based on market rate that will be determined by our city forester to match the surrounding areas. So it will be a deterrent towards going initially in that direction, and we will also be encouraging replacement over cash in lieu.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on that? Did you have anything to add? Okay. Any other council member questions or comments on the consent? Okay, before asking for a motion on the council items, I want to remind everyone that item 6D contains an intergovernmental agreement which requires 2/3 approval of council. Is there a motion by council that consent items 6A through 6D and 6F through 6J be approved? Councilmember Nguyen.
I make this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, so council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marsh Holshan, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ward, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. All council members have entered their vote. My button, there it works. And the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. Next, approval of the borough item. Is there a motion by borough that consent item 6K be approved? You can, did you want to make the motion? Okay, Authority Member Goldstein, would you like to make the motion? So moved.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the borough agenda item.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Nguyen.
I second this motion.
Thank you. Borough members, please cast your vote electronically. Authority Member Marsh Holshan, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Authority Member Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. Catching up with the screen. Authority Member Ward, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
And Authority Member Goldstein, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. All borough members have entered their vote, and the results will be displayed on the screen. That also passes unanimously with the borough member outside of it. Our screens don't have you on it yet, so sorry about that, Authority Member. All right. So we're moving on to action items, and yes, you may be excused. Thank you for coming. Earlier this evening, it was requested that item 6E be moved to action items. As mentioned, we'll review this item now before continuing with the agenda. Item 6E is council's consideration of resolution number 2024-109, approving the 2024 amendment to the employment agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and the city and county manager. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Ms. Macklin, HR Director.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Recently, pursuant to the employment agreement, City Council has concluded an assessment of the city and county manager's performance based on the annual performance review conducted by Council. City Council would like to consider a performance-based merit increase for Mrs. Hoffman to move her to the 70th percentile of the 2025 range for city manager, or the 70th percentile of the 2024 range, which is 317,204, whichever is greater. The CCOB salary ranges will be finalized at the end of December 2024. With that, I'll turn it over to council.
All right, thank you very much. We'll proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, please make your way to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. John Ewalt from Pinnacle North. The memo for item 6E, an amendment to the city and county manager's contract, has raised many questions for me. I have no intention of commenting on or questioning the merits of the evaluation, only the process by which it occurred. My questions are specifically for council. The first question, where's the rest of the memo? There was really nothing of use reported in the published memo. As representatives of the people of Broomfield, it seems that you should inform the people you represent of the outcome of your evaluation. What metrics were used to rate Ms. Hoffman's performance? What strengths and areas for improvement were discussed? What concerns from the community were raised, etc.? As representatives of the people of Broomfield, it should be a given to represent our concerns and inform us of your understanding of how our city is being managed. Related, it seems strange to me that Ms. Hoffman's direct report has written the memo and not the mayor or a member of council. While this is not a conflict of interest, as I assume Ms. Macklin wrote the memo at council's direction, it would be more proper if council was providing that information, not an employee of the reviewee. My next question, why did you set Ms. Hoffman's salary at the 70th percentile and not set her salary directly? The 70th percentile of a yet to be determined range is by definition an unknown value. I am assuming that the HR department is going to, or has already done, a survey of surrounding and like-sized communities to create a salary range for the manager's position. But if that range was not set before you made your decision, then you have created three major issues. First, the Broomfield Charter specifies that it is council's duty to set the salary of the manager. It is perfectly reasonable to depend on HR for guidance and support in setting the manager's salary, but you are ultimately responsible for the decision and should fully own it. Your decision shows no ownership and no responsibility. Second, the HR department, and specifically Ms. Macklin, is now responsible for setting her boss's salary. While the salary range is likely based on actuals from other communities, it is still going to be subjective, especially the minimum and maximum of the range, and this clearly creates a conflict of interest. Finally, your decision to set Ms. Hoffman's salary to an unknown value means your intention, whatever that is, regarding her performance is unclear to the public and possibly to her. By not making a real decision, you're sending mixed messages to the public and possibly to your employee. To that point, what is your intention? In the memo, the phrase performance-based merit increase is used. To me, that means a raise. However, moving Ms. Hoffman from the 70th percentile to the 70th percentile is not a raise. At best, it might result in a cost of living increase. I certainly hope the reason for moving this from the consent agenda was to give yourselves more time to directly address the apparent lack of ownership and the conflict of interest your indecision has created. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to questions from City Council. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions? Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Director Macklin for answering my questions earlier, the emails I sent to you about this. And my concern to sort of echo what has just been stated, that we don't have an exact figure. When would we have that? I think you estimated sometime in December, the 2025 estimate would be.
That is correct. All the salary ranges for the CCOB positions will be finalized in December.
Is there a reason we would need to act on this measure today and not postpone that till December?
I can't think of any.
So it's just a matter of calendaring in that sense.
Yeah, I think one thing to note is Ms. Hoffman was entitled to her salary increase at the time of her anniversary date and has decided to defer that to January when all the other employees receive their wage. So the timing of us trying to collect the wage data is to get that closer to when all the other salary ranges are determined.
Right, thank you. If there's time for a motion is later, I'll make it later when we get finished with questions.
Yes, this is questions. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Not seeing any. Okay. So next is council's consideration of the proposed resolution number 2024-109. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2024-109 by title?
Resolution number 2024-109, approving the 2024 amendment to employment agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and the city and county manager.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Henkel? So
I have,
we have, so is there a motion?
my motion is that we postpone this action item until we have the 2025 estimates in hand.
Is that a proper motion, Ms. Rogers? Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Henkel, is there okay, second. Is there any discussion?
If I could just
Councilmember
real quickly,
Cohen?
I'm sorry, I'll be
Yeah,
real
no.
quick, just to then go forward. I'm just not comfortable voting on a blank check, basically not knowing the exact figure, and want to be able to explain that to my constituents, notably the one who just spoke, that I think it's our responsibility to have all these figures in hand before we finalize this. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Marsh Holston.
Thank you, Mayor. For the reasons stated by the resident as well as Councilmember Cohen, I support this motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? So we'll move forward to the vote. Can you state, was it a date certain or until we have the 2025?
I just stated until the 2025 estimates are completed. This is the market
January
rate.
14th is the first, is that January meeting?
Are both meetings in December off?
They're earlier, the last meeting is December 10th.
Would we have an opportunity after this meeting to look at calendars and decide if we can make that work by the December 10th meeting, or do we need to set the date this evening?
We don't, we
We
can
don't, okay.
set it to a date uncertain and have that delegation by council, if that's okay, Mayor.
Okay, anyone have an issue with that? If vote for the motion? Okay.
Attorney Rogers, can you advise what the memo might read, since we will have the wages, but the current direction is to come back and pay her at the 70th percentile. So do you simply want the memo to read at the 70th percentile of the 2025 range, which is XX dollars annually? So
Well, the motion member was whichever was higher, correct?
correct, and that was just to preclude a
And
salary
that
decrease.
decision was made without knowing what that figure would be. My concern is it could be represent a 10% increase, 15% increase, or it could represent a decrease. I don't know what that average will be. I'm not comfortable acting without knowing. So I think it's just behooves us to have those figures available before we approve them.
So would it be acceptable to still have the whichever is higher, but you
I
don't
mean, that's
know
what
yet?
council agreed to. So I think I have a different preference, but I'm deferring to the majority.
Right, that was the majority. Okay, so we have to vote on this now because we have a second, unless there's any other discussion online. So we're going to vote on a delay until we get the actual increases for 2025. I mean, the ranges.
Can we try to restate that in a way that's most clear so we know what action to take? So would it be that council directs staff to come back when the 2025 salary range is set for the city and county manager, to move her to the 70th percentile of the 2025 salary range, which is blank dollar, and the memo would fill in that dollar amount, and then you would be voting on that?
I'm seeing head nods, so yeah.
Okay, that will help give me direction how to draft the memo.
Thank you, Ms. Macklin. All right, so we're going to vote on this alternative motion. Council members, please cast your vote electronically. Council member Marsh Holston, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. Council member Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
No.
And Council member Ward, please state your vote verbally.
No.
All right, thank you very much. All council members have entered their vote and that passes 6-4. Did it need to have a higher threshold or no, since it was an alternate motion? Okay, so all good. All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Macklin. Next, under action items this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration of 2 resolutions and an ordinance on first reading relating to the proposed Village at Westview development. I'll now declare the public hearing open. We'll follow the city standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we'll have the applicant's presentation. Then we'll ask for public comments and final comments from the applicant, and finally, questions from city council members. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask your staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to the community and good evening to council. Ms. Lynn Merwin is going to introduce us to this item. The applicant is here. This has been a long time coming. I think we've been working on this project for just a little over 3.5 years. Deputy Director, please introduce us to this item.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. The subject proposal this evening is a request for consideration of approval of a PUD plan amendment, a site development plan, and a final plat for a mixed-use development titled Village at Westview. There are also 3 agreements associated with this application. Next slide, please. The property consists of 2 parcels located at the east edge of the Skystone neighborhood at 108th Avenue and Sim Street along the southern border of the city and county of Broomfield. The development site is adjacent to residential communities within Jefferson County and the city of Westminster to the south and east. The development comprises 2 parcels totaling 13.3 acres. The proposed mixed-use development includes commercial and residential uses. The parcels are zoned Planned Unit Development, or PUD, and are governed by the Great Western Park PUD plan. Next slide, please. The Broomfield Comprehensive Plan designation for the northern parcel is commercial, while the southern parcel is designated both open lands and commercial. We can see these designations in the image on the left. The proposed development on the northern property is consistent with the commercial designation and will remain unchanged. The comprehensive plan's commercial designation calls for commercial uses such as office and retail with no residential uses. The open lands designation shown in green there designates or envisions passive and active recreational uses, but is not envisioned for commercial or residential uses. The application therefore proposes both commercial and residential uses on the southern parcel and is not consistent with the comprehensive land use designations. The application therefore requires a comprehensive plan land use map amendment to change the designation of the southern parcel to mixed use commercial, which permits a variety of uses, including residential, when approved through a PUD process. Next slide, please. On this slide, we see a color representation of the proposed site plan for the properties, and I apologize, but due to the layouts, the north is to the left and Sim Street appears along the top of the image to orient you all. And the parcel is bisected there by Skystone Parkway. The proposed PUD amendment establishes specific uses and development standards for this site related to setbacks and building heights. The proposed site plan establishes the development details. The northern parcel shows a restaurant, an event space with an outdoor courtyard incorporating additional seating and lawn games. There are 12 pickleball courts, including indoor courts, outdoor covered courts, and outdoor uncovered courts for a variety of play experiences. The southern property is proposed for both commercial and residential uses. The residential development includes 70 attached condominium or condo units along the western and southern border, distributed within 14 buildings, an additional 8 condo-style units above the commercial buildings for a total of 78 units. The applicant has signed a memorandum of understanding with Broomfield, committing to provide 12% of the units or 9 units to Broomfield's inclusionary housing program for a 30-year period. The commercial buildings on the southern parcel will be located centrally and on the eastern portion of the site along Sim Street and Skystone Parkway. These commercial tenant spaces are intended for retail, office, and restaurant uses. One of the spaces is planned for a quick service restaurant with a drive-through. The proposed PUD amendment includes a request to amend the previously established 38-foot maximum building height within both parcels. If approved, the northern property will permit a building height of up to 40 feet to accommodate an architecturally varied roof line. The southern parcel will permit a building height of up to 42 feet for the commercial buildings only. The residential buildings located along the western and southern property line will adhere to the existing 38-foot maximum building height in the existing approved PUD plan. The proposed PUD also proposes to reduce a required setback and landscape buffer along the southern and western property line of the southern parcel from 100 feet in width to 50 feet in width to accommodate the proposed site layout. Next slide. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to defer to the applicant to address the architecture since I've covered the building height. I think that's the most significant thing. So next slide, please, and then the next. Thank you. Parking will include surface parking spaces on both parcels, as well as attached and detached garage spaces for the residential units. A parking variance is proposed to allow custom parking standards for the commercial uses. The parking totals are consistent with a parking study completed by the applicant. The two properties will allow for cross parking. However, there is an excess of parking provided within the southern parcel, which will be available to patrons of the northern parcel, and the northern parcel does have a shortfall. There are two short-term waiting spaces have been identified for the restaurant staff to direct. I'm sorry, I skipped a part here. The parking variance will also permit the applicant to provide 6 drive-through queue spaces rather than the 8 queue spaces as required in the municipal code for the proposed drive-up window within the commercial building A on the southern parcel. And so to mitigate that, there are 2 short-term waiting spaces identified for restaurant staff to direct drive-through guests to wait in if needed. The overall parking proposal and variances have been reviewed and accepted by the city traffic engineer and the transportation planner. Next slide, please. So there are 3 agreements associated with the subject development. The first is a subdivision improvement agreement that outlines the developer's responsibilities to complete public improvements. This agreement is eligible for administrative approval by the city manager should the overall project be approved tonight. The second agreement is an intergovernmental agreement between Broomfield and the city of Westminster. This agreement, which is linked in the agenda report, outlines the cash in lieu payment of approximately $300,000 from the developer to support the future expansion of Sim Street adjacent to the property that would be done by the city of Westminster in the future. The fee will be paid to Broomfield and held in an interest-bearing account and then conveyed to the city of Westminster at a future date as described in the agreement. Broomfield has guaranteed a 6% interest rate on the collected fee for a period of up to 8 years. At the conclusion of this hearing, City Council will be asked to vote to approve resolution number 2024-163, authorizing the city manager to sign this agreement. The third is a tax sharing agreement to provide support to the development to attract and grow restaurant, retail, and neighborhood service businesses. And our city economist, Jeff Romine, will speak to this proposal following my presentation. Next slide, please. So the key issue for this application relates to the neighbors' concerns regarding the reduced setback and landscape buffer. The existing approved PUD plan for the subject property established a 100-foot parking and building setback area, along with a 6-foot high berm along the western and southern edge of the southern property to buffer the anticipated neighborhood commercial development for the existing residential neighborhood of Walnut Creek. The proposed PUD plan amendment includes a request to reduce the 100-foot landscape buffer to 50 feet, which is specified in the PUD and site development plan. The reduced buffer area does not feature a berm due to drainage concerns, but instead includes landscaping to provide screening of the site. The current proposal identifies residential uses instead of the originally anticipated commercial uses adjacent to this buffer. Next page, please. Next sheet. On September 9th of this year, the Land Use Review Commission held a public hearing concerning the proposal and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the application with no conditions. At the LURC hearing, adjacent landowners within the city of Westminster and Jefferson County noted concerns related to proposed head-in parking spaces along the western and southern property lines of the southern parcel and requested additional landscaping in the buffer area. The applicant has revised the plans to address these concerns. The applicant has also added enhancements to the pedestrian infrastructure since the LURC hearing based on staff comments, including widening the sidewalk along the west side of Sim Street and incorporating a bump out curb along Skystone Parkway to provide traffic calming. Next slide, please. The applicant has complied with the Broomfield requirements related to a study session, a neighborhood meeting, and public notices. The applicant also held focus groups with the neighbors. Next slide, please. And the application has met all public notice requirements. This application includes a request for a comprehensive master plan amendment, a modification to the zoning, and a final plat and site development plan. City Council generally needs to decide if this development is consistent with the master plan, and if so, should approve the proposed amendment to the existing master plan land use map. In addition, for the proposed zoning amendment, that's the PUD plan amendment, and site development plan, the project should mitigate to the extent possible negative impacts on the surrounding property, and the land uses within the proposal should be compatible with one another and with nearby properties. For the final plat, the proposed public facilities and services should be adequate, consistent with the city's utility planning, and capable of being provided in a timely and efficient manner. The proposal should also comply with the design standards established in the applicable Broomfield Municipal Code sections. Staff believes these technical requirements have been met. A complete list of all the relevant review criteria is provided in the staff report. And resolution number 2024-158 sets out draft findings for City Council's consideration. So this concludes my portion of the presentation, and Mr. Romine will briefly address the tax sharing agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Merwin. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and City Manager Hoffman. Next slide, please. So this is one of those infamous ask a question and here's some detail. And I wanted to provide the details just to help you understand the modeling and the reference for how we put together this development tax reimbursement approach. So first off is Lynn is definitely reviewed. That represents the full development and that's what we used as far as the analysis. So it includes both roughly 22,000 square feet for the 2 restaurant facilities, 4,000 square feet of additional retail, and roughly 4,000 for service-oriented businesses. So these would be the types of things like an insurance agent or others not generating sales tax. And the purpose was, in talking with the development team, they wanted to create a neighborhood serving area, not just a restaurant area or just something else, but something that served all needs for the nearby residents. The second set of bullets were broken apart because that provides some of those numbers that we oftentimes talk about. So I want to just do it in a very simple way. There's roughly $50 million with investment that will occur on the private sector side to build those residential units and provide those into the marketplace. They roughly will amount to about $600,000 to $650,000 on average is what the average price will be. And so that gives you some sense of it. There are affordable units as pointed out in the memo that will be provided on site. And so those are accounted for as best I could, obviously trying to understand where this will be in 2 years. And then finally, about $10 million in commercial. You'll note also that I talk about the tenant businesses will be occupying that 30,000 square feet, what the annual sales are. And if you recall from some of the conversations that we've had with council over the last 2 years, we've talked about average square feet per sales. As an example, what the developer for Broomfield Town Square was citing was roughly $600 a square foot on average across all 150,000 square feet of those businesses. So when I use oftentimes a very conservative number because I just think that's the best way to go at these types of developments. Moving forward then, the last set of bullets are really focused on what the tax reimbursement approach will be. As you've heard City and County Manager Hoffman talk about, we changed our philosophy when we started working with Macerich on the Flatirons Crossing redevelopment and what that would look like. This is another step forward. So recently council's heard presentations from 2 of our catalytic development projects. One of the things that I have heard council express is a little bit of a frustration, if you will, but a sharing that says, hey, if you can tell us one thing, but tell us what you're really going to do type thing. And if you don't do that, how do we make sure that our reimbursements, our incentive is necessarily tied to what you're delivering as opposed to what you promised? And so we incorporated that into this project. So real briefly, just to give you the dynamic of what we're doing here, there is no tax reimbursement coming from any other entities. So Jeffco Schools are not being asked for it to support it, nor North Metro Fire. Secondly, in the discussion with Manager Hoffman and with the developers, we determined that the property tax, the real and business personal property tax, but specifically the real related to the residential, should not be touched and used to reimburse the development. That was something that should be paying for city services and city programs. And so that's why it's done that. Secondly, as many of you become very familiar with the way property taxes work, as well as even the sales tax works in the city and county of Broomfield, We do have a 4.15% sales tax, as you know. However, 3.5 is what we call general fund. The rest is going to items the council and the voters have previously discussed and determined should get directed amounts from property tax or sales tax. So therefore, that is not being touched. We're only talking about the 3.5% sales tax is really what the reimbursement's coming from. 50% of the use tax is being applied to this project. That would come from both sides, but that is something that we've done in other projects similarly. In the end, then the final bullet point kind of brings it back together and says, and let's make sure that the city and county of Broomfield is benefiting and we're supporting our future fiscal sustainability that's identified as both a community and council priority. Next slide, please. All that said, it all turns into this. And so rather than giving you the model, which I just described in general, this gives you the outcomes. So the reimbursement agreement, and this is that first thing. So I wanted to come back to something here because I've got so many numbers in this memo and other places that sometimes they get confusing. So I just wanted to take a moment here. Many times in development, one of the things that we bring to council is the fiscal impact. That's where we talk about the revenue minus the cost to provide our normal services, police, library, parks, and the list goes on. So the first bullet is talking about what that fiscal benefit looks like once we include the redevelopment agreement within it. And in that then, we are still projecting that over the 10-year period, we'd be receiving about $2.4 million net fiscal impact from the full revenue that's anticipated minus what the reimbursement is and minus our program costs, our staffing, our program costs and others. So that's that big number that you oftentimes talk about. And then you can see once this agreement burns off, we'd be receiving roughly $400,000 to $500,000 each year going forward through sales tax and property tax. So I wanted to just kind of call that out separately. Moving back to the reimbursement agreement then, as you can see, CCOB will be retaining $1.6 million during that first 10-year period. The sales and use tax revenues retained at that's at 0.65 that I was talking about that goes to open space and others. That's roughly $1 million that we'd be receiving. The sales and use tax revenue divided between the 3.5%, CCOB will retain roughly 3.94% and the developer receiving 1.83%. And that is because of the way that we set the program up. So the idea is we're getting a larger share, but they're being incentivized because of the development and what's bringing forward and for them to bring appropriate businesses into that will generate some of that sales tax, will generate the sales tax revenue, not some of it, but all of it. The maximum redevelopment, this is something we put in place about 5 years ago on almost every agreement. It was we now put a maximum amount that can be earned so that we know what the high side is. It's not an open-ended pledge. This is very defined. And so that's something that council and the city manager has requested. And that's what we did again here. So you can see it's $2.1 million through the development reimbursement agreement to be going back to the developer over time. Here's the newest wrinkle, and I'm just going to spend a moment to just talk about this. So as expressed by council, Mayor, I'm thank you for your positive view of this. As I'm looking at you, you're kind of encouraging me, but in seriousness, several of the conversations have come back and says, well, you said you're going to do this development, but you're actually going to do this. Well, here what we're creating is an incentive that says, if you say you're going to do this, but you end up doing this, we're going to share. And here's the cool part about this. We gain during that period, but so does the developer. So if the developer, through picking their tenants and encouraging their tenants to grow and support this, they actually can get an incentive beyond what they would have earned otherwise. It doesn't mean the 2.1 still holds. That max is still there, but means that they would go from, we'll say 1.7 or 1.8 or 1.6 up to the 2.1. So it gives them every reason to perform and perform timely. In our conversation and talking to the developers, they were working on the model and I was working the model. They're like, well, we want to do it on a yearly basis and figure it all out. And I said, really, let me just tell you, since I've done these models a bit, it's really, if you do really well in the beginning and you grow really fast in the beginning and you do that for the first 3 or 5 years, that's the high side. Don't worry about year 2 versus year 7 or something like that. Just perform strongly at the beginning and continue to strong. And then that's how you can earn the maximum. So it really is the path as opposed to an annualized thing. But just for your knowledge, it's set up, as you can see in the agreement, the way that we've shared with you is how they grow each year will determine what the shares are looking like for that incentive side of it. So in the end of this, all of those numbers distill down to that simple last bullet point. And that is the tax revenue ratio is we will receive 3.6 for every dollar that we share. So we receive almost $4 for every dollar we give to this developer to bring this project forward in a very difficult site. So at that, we can take questions, but the first step now is to turn it over to the development team for their presentation, Mayor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romine. That was a lot, but I get it. Next is our applicant presentation. So would you guys like to come up and introduce yourselves for the record?
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Josh Tiemann, one of the developers. First of all, I'd like to thank the Mayor Pro Tem, City Council for being patient with us. As Manager Hoffman states, this has been a long process. I think it's been about almost 2 years since we stood here before you. So we've come a long way. So we've been able to come a long way primarily because of the team here at the City Council. So I'd like to kind of call out a few individuals. Shelby, Anna, and Lynn in community development have been unbelievable. Ben in engineering, as Jeff mentioned, very difficult site. So Ben has really helped us. Travis at North Metro, Bryce at Traffic, Jeff at Economic Vitality, and then City Manager Jennifer. So I think bottom line is our lines of communication have been unbelievable, very open, honest, and it's been a true pleasure to work with the City and Council of Broomfield and the team. So thank you for that. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. So once again, we've expanded our family since the last time I was in front of you guys. So once again, just to orient, we're a local developer from here in Arvada, run multiple businesses down there. We've actually added another partner, a group called TSC Capital Partners. They are bringing a skill set that J&J Management didn't have, and that is that single family attached condo units, the 70 units that we've been talking about or we will look at here shortly. So they've been in the business for many years, over 300 some units, and have been a great asset to our team in general. Next slide. We've surrounded ourselves with a number of experts that are actually here in the room tonight that, depending on the questions from City Council, I will be calling on them to come up and help with answers. Next slide. So I'm going to skip over some of these slides as Lynn did some of her slides. I think one comment that I'd like to make on this slide is I've had a number of conversations with the St. John group, the group that's developing the stuff just northwest of us, and what they're building north of Broadcom. And there are some unbelievable synergies here between both of our developments. He's excited about us. We're excited about them. I think we can feed off of each other to the fact that, you know, the footbridge that's going in across Walnut Creek and such, what we're building is perfect for his clientele, and maybe we can provide some of that housing for them to walk across the bridge. So we're super excited about that. I know we've got full support of Brandon over at the St. John's Partners, and I think there's been a memo that's been sent to the City and County of Broomfield expressing that support. Next slide, please. So we are not your typical developer, right? And it's been mentioned before, multiple focus groups with Broomfield residents. The neighborhood meeting that we had, you know, a few years ago was unbelievably attended well, in person, virtual. We've continued conversations with a number of the Broomfield residents as concepts were modified. And then we've also had a number of conversations with some of the Westminster residents. So we've tried to listen more than talk from a developer standpoint to be able to meet the needs of this underserved area. Next slide, please. And what we heard along the way was this is what everybody wants. And it was such, it was great to start out the meeting tonight with talking about Small Business Saturday, because as you look across what's needed in this area and what the residents want in this area, all I see is small business. As a small business owner, multiple small business owner in Arvada, I know the importance of that to Broomfield, not only from a tax perspective, but more importantly from a labor perspective. So it's great to see how what you guys have already proclaimed as an important thing to Broomfield, we're going to just pile more onto that. Next slide, please. So to orient, I've got my slide oriented a little bit different than Lynn's. So this is how it looks, which is perfect. I'm glad we're both on the same page here. Once again, we've got 4 commercial buildings, mixed use buildings, 8 lofts, 2 different models, 70 single family attached or condo units, comprised of 14 buildings. Those are 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. One of the conversations that I did have with Brandon over at St. John's, he was thrilled that we were bringing in this type of product, knowing the employees that are going to go into his units for rent. And then I think Pickle Brewski is going to be an unbelievable concept to come to Broomfield. I think, there are some other like-minded units going up around Denver, but nothing in this area. So I think you guys are going to really have a really cool gem that you can point at and say, this is what we want. This is what we want. So the Pickle Brewski, obviously a mix of indoor, outdoor pickleball courts, but not just for the pickleball enthusiasts. There's going to be golf simulators, karaoke rooms, lots of private rental space. I know that's a lack of private rental space in the area in Northwest Arvada. So I see that as being booked out all the time. And then I love our little neighborhood park down on the south side. Next slide. I love this slide. Goes back to the not your typical developer. You spoke and we listened. So on the left-hand side, you have the changes that we've incorporated from the concept hearing. I'm not going to go through I'm not going to go through all of those, but a few that I'd like to highlight. We increased the setback a little bit. We eliminated a commercial building, eliminated a single family attached unit. We modified the Skystone median. We provided more parking access for the existing Skystone Park after communications with open space in your parks department. We acted upon that. And as you can imagine, and it's been spoken and it will continue to be a big topic, is the cut fill is a big issue here. And so our goal as the developer is to eliminate a lot of that overfill and get down to as close to original grade as we can. Obviously, there are some considerable amount of issues when it comes to drainage coming off of the Westminster Jefferson County residents that we hope to fix going forward. I know I've talked with a number of Westminster residents who are here in person about his concerns or their concerns. Really what I'd like to highlight is the changes that we made since the LERC hearing. So a lot of great things came out of that back in early September. And these 4 bullets really speak volumes to, I think, what we're changing. So one of the big concerns was some of the parking spots at the dead ends of those single family attached. We've eliminated those, okay? They wanted us to add landscaping, so we just completely eliminated those. We added a consistent 14-foot sidewalk to connect north and south along Sims, which would be great for the development that's going in there. We improved the pedestrian crossing at Skystone Parkway by providing a curb bump out. And then first and foremost, we've increased the number and the amount of landscaping in that buffer just to once again help mitigate, help lessen that impact coming from the Westminster residents. So you spoke, we heard, and we've made some changes. So we're excited about the changes that we've made there. Next slide. So as Lynn mentioned, I'm going to go into a little bit more of the renderings. This is the Pickle Brewski on the north parcel. Obviously, as you can see, we're looking northeast here towards the golf course, towards the airport. This building, this restaurant bar area is going to be an unbelievable structure. It's going to provide lots of community amenities. And as a restaurateur, we are super excited about what we're going to bring to Broomfield, not only for the residents, but for sales tax for you guys. And I think the work that we've done with Jeff to demonstrate that is is pretty apparent. The pickleball is oriented like this so that we eliminate or, attempt to eliminate all those concerns about the sound of pickleball that we heard. So that's just the elephant in the room. I'm going to call it out. We, oriented the building to where it's the open pickleball areas are the farthest away from any kind of residence, whether it be Broomfield or Westminster. We've got areas or ideas about how to lessen that on the fence as well. So we've really, from a developer standpoint, we're trying to be proactive and overcome some of those negative connotations that do come from pickleball because we know that this is going to be extremely popular. Next slide. If I go down onto ground level, this is looking at that turf area in the middle, a great little plaza for if you're not the pickleball fan or you've done pickleball and you want to have the kids run around, you want to play some lawn games. So once again, something for everybody, not just pickleball players. Next slide. Looking the opposite direction, this is kind of looking southeast now. As you can see, that building is smack dab in the middle of the residences. So, we're trying to lessen that noise that's coming from that. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see a little taller building. That's another auxiliary eating, drinking area with a rooftop deck, another entertaining area. One of the other things that we're looking at is the activations that are going to happen in this area. So, small concerts, other amenities that we'll be able to provide to Westminster, Broomfield residents and beyond. Next slide. We're going to head south here. We're going to look on the south parcel now. These are elevations that are provided by our architect. These are the mixed use buildings. So if you're familiar with Lot 1 over in Arvada, this is almost a carbon copy, cut and paste of that. So once again, you have 2 lofts upstairs, a 2-bedroom and office and a 3-bedroom and office, garages. So we really were conscious of parking, as was mentioned before by Lynn, about trying to achieve as much parking as we can. Next slide. I start to look at the single family attached units. Once again, all of the 2 and 3 bedrooms have their own garages. And then we've, on our site plan that I'll show you here shortly, we have are planning on building 1-car garages for the studio 1-bedroom units. These are going to be, I think, very desirable. Our partners over at TSC have done a number of these and all for sale. And then obviously there's that income component too that I'll speak about as we get a little further. Next slide. Perfect. So the aerial view of the development, this is looking southwest. These are the 4 mixed use buildings in the foreground here, surrounded by the single family attached units. One of the changes that we made really early on, based on what we heard from a lot of the Westminster residents, was how those single family units were oriented. And so what we did is we actually rotated them to lessen the amount of impact to those Westminster residents. And really what we created is kind of a backyard to backyard feel. And if we go to the next slide, it really demonstrates that. Oh, sorry. Next slide, please. Yep. So you'll see here the setback. This is an old rendering. Obviously, you still see a few of those parking, but those have been eliminated. And you saw that in Lynn's presentation. So we have eliminated that. Those headlights coming into the Westminster residence, we heard you loud and clear. So we eliminated that and then added a lot more landscaping along that area. But as you can see here, there is a, in some places, 75 plus feet between house to house, Westminster to Broomfield, and it's really that backyard to backyard. And after looking at this and then, kind of diving into a lot of other projects here in Broomfield, we're not setting a precedent. We're following something that City of Broomfield has already accomplished. I have just 4 examples of multi-use or mixed use residents backing up to single family, the Academy Place and Courtyard Apartments over on West 120th, Country Club Village condos. off of East 10th Avenue, Flatirons Park on 220 Laurel Street, and then the residences over at 1302 West 4th Avenue. Those are all 50-foot buffer or less. So I think what we have here falls right in line with projects that have already been approved and have been built and have been lived in for a number of years here in Broomfield. Next slide. We're going to take a look at a few renderings of the mixed use. These are the commercial on the first floor and lofts upstairs. Next slide. Another perspective of them. What we've seen and experienced over in Northwest Arvada at the Village at Five Parks is this is a very desirable concept, right? People want to live, eat, work, play in a little radius. And so the ability for people to get their hair cut, get their dog taken care of, go to the dentist, get your eyes checked, stop in and have, a nice gastropub meal, visit your insurance agent is something that I know Arvada has prided themselves on. If you know anything about or heard anything about the Village at Westview, the city of Arvada uses that development where Lot 1, our businesses are, which we're mimicking here, as a real pillar of their city. Next slide. If I look at some of the single family attached, this is just the two pictures of the little park area on the south side. I can just see the smiles on these kids and families being able to, play, go eat, entertain, all in an area where they've been able to have some affordable housing for themselves. Next slide. Another area, the attached, obviously, the architect that has put these together has done multiple units like this up in Erie, down by Sloan's Lake. So what we've designed is something that I think the market is looking for based on the experience from TSC and their feedback. These 1, 2, 3 bedroom units with garages is highly sought after. Next slide. Housing, housing, housing. We keep talking about it, right? But more importantly, the ability to provide Broomfield residents with some affordable housing, as Jeff mentioned, 12% of the units will be deed restricted for 30 years, a total of 5 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom. We're excited for this. Just personally speaking, as a small business employee or as a small business owner, a lot of my employees are in this bucket, right? And so to be able to provide a product for them from a small business owner is so important for us. Next slide. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teeman. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with the in-person signups, and we'll start with there's 7 people signed up. 3 are Broomfield residents, 4 are outside of Broomfield. So we'll start with the 3 Broomfield residents first. That's John Carmichael, Roxy Jewell, and Nancy Davis. Please make your way to the podium. State your name and neighborhood for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
John Carmichael, Skystone. Also representing a lot of Skystone residents, not all of them, I don't know, but as you know, what happened in the Lurk, this is sort of being duplicated again tonight. And I really don't think that you're not going to hear anything new tonight. I mean, you've heard it. You've heard the good, you've heard some of the complaints, and in the Lurk, those commissioners heard some weird stuff. But for me, I just can't believe we're here finally. I just can't believe it. It's been a long time. But me and many of my neighbors are excited about this development. And since I don't think that this is really our meeting, because we've already had our meetings and our Lurk and everything, I really think it's time for you all to meet the moment. We want this. We are Broomfield residents. We are constituents. We're their constituents, wherever they are. So we're gonna be watching. We feel like this should be approved unanimously and without conditions, like the Lurk, for all the reasons you've already heard. I'm not gonna repeat what everybody has already been saying for the last 3 years, however long it's been. But now it's your turn. We've said our piece. We've said it. You know what it is. So that's all I have. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Next is Roxy Jewell.
Roxy Jewell at Lockmore. I've been watching this the whole time. The only thing I had to say is I wish you could do the north side first. Because a lot of our developers have areas that they built and they're supposed to have some commercial at these developments. And to this date, some of these areas are done with the residential and the commercial area is still dirt. So that's the only reason why, and since the north side is separated, it would be wonderful because I do pickleball and I do restaurants and I do bring people with me. So the sooner you can do that, the better it will be for me. And plus I have a couple of groups that we need places to meet. So I'm ready for it. I'm past ready for it. And it is Broomfield. So we need to remember that we need to do what is best for Broomfield, and it will help the rest of the community to have this development started and completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nancy Davis.
Good evening. My name's Nancy Davis. I've been a Skystone resident for 10 years, so I'm one of the first people that moved into Skystone. And I have followed every previous proposal, this proposal, since it first started. I've commented on it. I've participated in different meetings, et cetera. And I strongly urge the council to support this proposal. It is past time, frankly, for us to have these services on that location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to our non-residents, we have Travis LaBerge, Mike Kohler, Roger Carollo, and Glenn Frunlich.
Good evening. My name is Travis LaBerge, and as most of you know, my wife and I have lived in our home, which abuts this land for over 19 years. I'm the person who for 19 years has been coming and explaining how proposals for this land are always a bad idea. I'm here tonight to voice my continuing support for this proposal. At the LURC meeting 2 months ago, my neighbors and I proposed a setback compromise of 50 feet instead of the 100-foot setback, which was promised originally. And instead of the 75 feet that we proposed 2 years ago in front of council, in exchange for dense vegetation within the setback. The latest drawings from the developer honor this compromise. We appreciate this gesture and we thank the developers for adding this to the conceptual landscape drawings. We are assuming that you will vote to approve this project tonight. As I've said multiple times on record, this project is a good idea. The devil is just always in the details. When you vote to approve this project tonight, we ask that you add in one simple condition. When the landscaping goes into this setback, that it honors the conceptual spirit that the drawings demonstrate this evening. Specifically, mature trees, not saplings, densely planted trees, meaning that they are planted at the minimum recommended range, not the maximum. A heavy mix of evergreen trees and shrubs to provide year-round privacy for the people already living here, and those who will become our new neighbors in these townhouses once they're built, and that the pad height be reduced to within 3 feet of historic grade. We aren't getting everything we hoped for on this development, such as the nature of compromise, but we're getting darn near everything that we could have hoped for this very troubling piece of land that Taylor Morrison saw fit to dump their fill dirt on over 10 years ago. The condition we are asking for is nothing more than what the developers have already conceptually drawn. We're not asking for anything additional. My understanding, and if my understanding about this is incorrect, I'm happy to be corrected, is that when the landscaping goes in, these drawings are not binding, meaning that it's not telling people where to plant every single tree or bush. So we're not asking for that type of detail. We just want the dense vegetation that these drawings represent. By approving this project with this one simple condition, you can guarantee that everyone gets a win. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Next, Mike Kohler.
Yes, I'm a City of Westminster resident since 1991, and I'm just here to voice my support for this project. I think it would be a wonderful addition to the area in general, you know, as opposed to that area may have been used for convenience store, gas station or something like that. I think it just would benefit the entire area. I'm not adjacent to the area, but I'm about 1.5 miles away. So I see it as a very positive for the whole area. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carollo?
Mayor and council, thanks for your time. I just want to say I'm Roger Carollo. I have a house that's basically 3 streets east in Countryside. So not in Broomfield, but I appreciate what I've heard tonight and the fact that the developer and community has worked together. I think this is going to be great for property value, for the fact that I can walk and go get a coffee or do some of the other things that are in the mixed use. So I just look for you to move forward. It's been a long time in coming and look forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Mr. Frundlich? Hope I said that right.
That's okay. I'm used to it. Glenn Freundlich. I'm a resident of Walnut Creek, where I've lived for 40 years. My property backs right up to the southern track here, so I am definitely affected by this. A few comments that I have. I appreciate what Mr. LaBerge is saying about the vegetation, but looking at the landscaping plan that's in the SDP that was posted either today or yesterday, it shows dense vegetation at the alley ends on the south side, but not on the west side. On the west side, the alley ends only get mountain mahogany and rock spirea, which are not going to block headlights. So I'd like to see that get addressed. I also had a concern that I had mentioned before about the snow storage, and again, I know there will be signs that they say no parking. People seem to ignore no parking signs. It would be great if there was something were done to kind of prevent parking in those areas anyways. My third concern was about the hours of operation that are listed in the PUD, and it shows that going until midnight on either the north parcel or the south parcel. Midnight seems awfully late, and I know we're talking about trying to mitigate pickleball noise. It's very quiet out there. I think pickleball noise at 12 o'clock at night would probably be disruptive to most of the people in the area there. I'm also wondering if you have any information on phasing of this. I think I'd heard that the north parcel would be going first. The south parcel would be going second, but whenabouts that might actually be happening would be another thing. I do agree that this is better than all the other proposals that have been on this site, but I'm still not a fan of it. And I just have a hard time believing that 18 3-story buildings are going to blend in with number 1 and 2-story houses in the area. I know there've been comparisons to 5 parks. The buildings in 5 parks that are most adjacent to residential are 2-story buildings, not 3-story buildings. And even the mixed use ones are probably 2/3 of a building would be 2-story and 1/3 would be 3-story. I'd like to comment on the 100-foot buffer setback and all that, but that's going to take too much time. So I'll just leave it at that. Although I guess I was a little surprised to see that there were focus groups with neighborhood residents. I don't remember seeing any or hearing anything about that before. Anyways, thanks for your time.
Thank you. And we'll have the applicant address some of those questions for you. But first, I want to ask, is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this item? We have opportunities to speak if you didn't sign up. I just wanted to put that out there. Anyone else? Would the applicant like to address any of the last commenters' concerns on landscaping, operating hours, phasing?
Let's start phasing.
Okay.
All of the horizontal will begin as soon as we can, both on the south lot and the north lot. And then it will all depend on financing and investors and type of climate and what's needed most. I think when you look at the proposal that's outlined by the Economic Vitality team. It's in our best interest to start generating sales tax as quickly as possible, so that residents can come and play pickleball with their friends. And eat and drink and solicit those businesses, those small businesses, for Small Business Saturday as quickly as we can. And anything else to add to that? Perfect. Second comment about landscaping. Yeah, we have a good mixture of evergreen and deciduous along all of the areas that back up to the Westminster residence. So that pretty much takes care of that. Snow storage. We have spent a lot of hours. I didn't know you could spend so many hours talking about snow storage. But as a building owner in Arvada, it's top of my mind because I used to do it for the last 5 years. So I think we've identified a number of areas, whether they are at those ends of those lots where we have eliminated parking, or there is plenty of snow storage in and around the Village of Westview area. I think those are the three.
Operating
Mayor.
hours, because
Yeah.
I thought it was 10 PM.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely not midnight. I can tell you as a small business owner in the suburbs, we are dead at 9 o'clock. Just, it's plain and simple. Where we have people playing pickleball at 10, maybe a few teenagers, but that's about it. It's quiet. This is the suburbs. So I don't think, we will not be open until midnight. Nobody will be there, and I'm not paying for labor for that late.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Teeman. We're going to now go to council member questions, so don't go too far away. Questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. Are there any questions from council? Can I see my online folks? Because both Ward 2 reps are at a conference.
Yeah, I have my hand, sorry, point of order. I have my hand raised.
I can't see that. I'm so sorry, Councilmember.
No worries. I
Davidio.
figured you couldn't.
We're going to switch over so I can see the Zoom, but go ahead. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much. So first of all, I do want to apologize to my Skystone residents, especially. I am on a work trip for my day job, so I am in the not nearly as beautiful, but still pretty cool city of Madison, Wisconsin right now. Anyway, so my questions are, I do want a little bit more elaboration on any sort of traffic calming that's going to occur. This was called out because of the asymmetrical nature of parking, and also for the folks who live in Skystone, it is more built out to the point that you would probably be having to cross the street to actually access the commercial amenities that would exist in that north lot. So I did hear a little bit of something about kind of bumping in the curb a little bit to reduce, presumably to reduce the amount of space a pedestrian would have to cross. But I'm very concerned. I don't want anyone frankly killed or maimed in something that could have been completely preventable on our part.
Okay. Yeah, so we've, with the help of the City and County of Broomfield traffic engineering team, we have made that crosswalk area that is west of 108th and Skystone. And I think in the plans, correct me if I'm wrong, team, that I don't want to call them rumble strips, but there'll be those kind of slow down. I don't know what the correct terminology is, to where people will slow down for that pedestrian crossway there, and made it fairly large per the city traffic team. So I think that's going to help alleviate hopefully any issues that we may be faced with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. That's helpful to know. So thank you for that elaboration, and I appreciate that because it is something that I do really care a lot about. And then my second question is mostly surrounding just the sales tax reimbursement, to get a sense of what it looks like. Is that industry standard? Where are we? Are we kind of giving up a little bit more? I suppose this is probably a question for Mr. Romine, just to help me ground what proportionally, what does this reimbursement look like compared to other areas?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, again, Jeff Romine, economist for the City and County of Broomfield. This is on par, if not actually, the ratios are probably stronger here than they are in some of our catalytic projects that we have going forward right now. In this particular case, because we isolated it just to be the sales tax, we're still in that mid 20 range is what we're really shooting for, which is still a 4-to-1 return. So just to a great degree compared to some of our other agreements, this is actually probably a little bit more revenue focused for us, if that helps you.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Those were my 2 questions, so I will yield the floor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. So unfortunately, I was not here on previous or your irritations of your presentation, so I really appreciate you being here. I have a couple questions. First one, since I've only been here for a year on City Council, so I have to ask, what would be the phases of the construction? Will this all be at once? Would this be during section by section? What would be the ideal time frame?
So just to kind of reiterate what we talked about a little bit, the horizontal is going to happen all together. Then as far as the vertical components, ideally all at once, focusing on the mixed use and the pickle brewski first, and then kind of phase in building after building after building of the single family attached. However, caveat, it all depends on market, interest rates, cost of goods, how many people I have, how many tenants, and the viability of that. Obviously, we don't want to be sitting on a whole bunch of commercial or mixed use without tenants in there. I can tell you that we probably have probably 8 to 10 very interested tenants already that fall into those categories. So once again, to start feeding into the City of Broomfield tax base, that's our goal.
And my next question is, again, from the phase of the construction, with the North Metro Fire, the temporary services, would that also be at the same time conduction of the development, or would that be hopefully ideally before, any, I guess, tenants move in?
I don't know that I can answer that from North Metro's perspective.
Councilmember Nguyen, are you asking about the new fire station that's going in?
Yeah,
what the
exactly.
timing is?
That's right.
Let's go to the next question, and I'll send a message real quick and see if we can get an answer on the timing.
Okay, thank you. No worries. And next questions I have then is for sustainability, if you wouldn't mind going over the EV parking, just because we, obviously on our community Broomfield, we want to make sure that we are sustainable, that we're moving towards the future. And of course, with new development, we have amenities that include electrical vehicle charging stations.
Yep. So right now I'd have to look at the architects too to find out all of the garage units have the 240 components. So all the garage units are capable. And then I don't know right offhand how many EV parking spots we have in the total community, but it's on the chart. So those would be obviously for private residences, and then we'll get it for the public here. It's a lot.
And I want to hear that. So obviously, take your time. So
my team's telling me that we met your code.
Okay. That's good. No. I'll take that. I'll take that answer. So
Yeah, perfect.
And my last question is, obviously I personally don't do pickleball, but I know a lot of folks who do, and they've been asking for this amenity in the community of Broomfield for a while. Will pickleball be year round, or will it be a seasonal, availability?
Year round.
Okay.
Year
Thank
round.
you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. That's all my questions, Mayor.
Thank you.
But Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased to hear that the residents and you have worked out a better plan. This was actually, Kenny, when I was brand new on council, this was really the first project that came to my attention, and I went out and observed the plans and the site, and we visited, and I certainly understood the concerns, but the fact that you all have come to terms, I think is really to everybody's credit, including yours.
Thank you.
The only question, though, is you kind of quickly indicated that the landscaping will be adequate, but the question was, will they be more mature trees rather than saplings going in? And I know there's more cost to do that, but again, I know these residents would like to see as much of the landscaping in place in a somewhat mature level, knowing that it'll grow over time. But can you give me a little bit more detail about the level of maturity of these trees? Are they going to be brand new saplings, or are they going to be, if you will, 2 or 3 year old saplings so that they're going to have more rapid growth?
Yep. Yeah, so if we could go back to that presentation, I'd like to go into the appendix area, and if that's possible. I don't know who's running the.
All things are possible here.
Perfect, good. So there's a slide after the appendix slide. It kind of talks about it. There you go. Oh, perfect. So you can see where we sat before the lurk, Councilman Leslie. And then
My screen isn't working here. so
Okay,
I'm gonna
got
have
you.
to
Yep,
stretch
peek over.
here a
Yep,
little
look
bit.
over her shoulder. And what we've done from a revised landscape buffer. So total number of trees went up, number of deciduous trees, evergreen trees, height, caliper, Austrian pines per linear feet, 70 more deciduous shrubs. No more parking spaces in that 50-foot buffer. So bigger trees, and hopefully that works. Does that help and answer?
Yeah, I know it's
Okay.
hard to respond by individual planting.
Yeah.
I realize that, but
Yep.
again, I think in the spirit of things, if y'all could be putting, again, a bit more mature trees rather than the, tiny things that normally would be planted.
Yep.
I think frankly, I think they'll also be more likely to survive than the very young saplings that are often put in and die very quickly. So, but thank you for that. I appreciate
thank
it. And I'm glad that there's a solution that makes not just the neighbors further away, but those who are literally right back to back up to where you're going to be working. I think that's great. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I do too remember all of this before. And so thank you for coming back, and thank you for doing all the stakeholder work that it does take to come together, even 2 different cities. That's pretty commendable. So if you want to come up to Highway 7, help us with Thornton up in my ward, I would appreciate it. I do have some questions. I did look at the site as well. I've been over there quite a few times. I'm thankful for the landscaping, for the sound and the lights. I think that's very important, particularly when it comes to pickleball. If you look at pickleball out of Denver, everyone has concerns about sounds and things like that. I also wanted to know too, and maybe this is a staff question, do we know when Westminster plans on expanding that roadway? Do we have any thoughts on that? Because that's my main concern. If we're putting money away for a road expansion, I want to make sure maybe we have a triggering event that causes Westminster to expand, and yeah.
We do not have a specific time frame at this point. Westminster CIP will operate similar to our CIP program. So they'll keep an eye on traffic counts on the road and see how development is progressing, both with this development, with Sims Technology Park, and with the Verve. And when we're hitting numbers that require road expansion, that's when they'll start looking at some plans.
Okay.
Ms. Donahoe, while you're at the,
I'd like to add to that just really quick too. So we are actually doing some landscaping along Sims along our property in the interim until City of Westminster pulls that trigger. So it's
Okay.
not going to look awkward.
Okay.
And it's part of drainage and all that other stuff too. So in the interim, we are taking care of it from a developer's to make it look presentable and nice until they do that.
Okay. Manager Hoffman, did you have something to add?
I was just going to ask Ms. Donahoe to come down and answer the question regarding North Metro Fire, please.
Yeah, so North Metro is currently under contract for a parcel in the area to construct a permanent fire station. So they're looking at beginning construction in 2025. But they are setting up a temporary fire station and staffing that fire station towards the end of this year. And we've been working closely with them on this project, and they have no concerns about servicing this parcel.
Thank you. I'm still working on my questions. Thank you. I wanted to know too, maybe Ms. Donahoe, if you can answer this, or if we know this answer. When NASA went to space and we worked with other countries, they were using the metric system when we were using inches, which is a major problem. I don't want to get down the road where we're having metrics where we're like saying, you know, we have a high traffic situation and Westminster is saying our metrics are different. Are we agreeing on the metrics of that expansion of that road before we even start?
So we've been working pretty closely with Westminster throughout this whole process. And that includes our traffic engineers and our city engineer as well, talking with them. So we are on the same page that the road needs to be expanded. I think we're all in agreement that we're going to keep an eye on the situation. We also know that we need to work together to expand a culvert in the area. So those conversations are definitely developing and they're definitely ongoing, but I am not the traffic engineer, so I don't know the specific numbers that we're looking for there.
Okay, I would like for staff, I might mention this later again too, but would like for staff to come back with at least some sort of metrics that we're following would be helpful. That way the neighbors know, because we don't want the neighbors to say, hey, you know, you guys said if more traffic comes, you know, and then your measurements are not getting triggered, right? So we want to make sure we're clear with the neighbors what that triggering looks like. The next thing for the commercial, for the triggering, what triggers the commercial exactly? Like Roxy said earlier, you know, a lot of times we're not with our commercial. So what happens if commercial doesn't come or doesn't happen? Or do we have any contracts already going? I don't know.
Jamie Miles, I'm Josh's partner for J&J.
Okay.
A couple of things. One, the model that cities put together, we're highly incented to put that in place because it has a timeline. So at 10 years it's done, and it takes time for us to be able to kind of gain back what that benefit is. And so we're highly incented to start working on that right away at the beginning. We will be doing this all three phases. The goal is to start them simultaneously. We'll build some of the mixed use, Pickle Brewski, and some of the townhomes. We're planning on starting those all at the same time. And the goal here is to try and focus on some of the pieces that are going to bring sales tax revenue quickly at the beginning of that. So when Josh talked about us going out and starting to solicit potential tenants, some of the focus is there, right? To try and make sure that we can bring in that sales tax revenue early on in the development.
Okay, all right. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions that are still alive that haven't been asked. One part of the presentation stuck out to me was that the inclusive housing ordinance was being met with 90% AMI as affordable housing. Can someone explain to me how 90% is affordable under our ordinance? Does that match up?
Mayor Pro Tem, council members. So Councilmember Cohen, as you may recall, when we updated the IHO, we did that. We increased the AMI levels for the for sale. So for single family, what council approved was 100% AMI. For mixed density or higher density multifamily for sale, we went up to 90% AMI. So they're meeting the IHO requirements as applied. And that also at that same time, I should mention, we switched from 10% of the units up to 12%. So that was the incentive that we set. We kind of traded off as through our recommendation is more units, but at a higher AMI level.
Okay. And 90% is now approximately what, 100,000 per household roughly?
Depends on the household size, but roughly yes.
And I did want to follow up just on what Councilmember Leslie was talking about in terms of the setback. And Mr. LaBerge presented the compromise. And he asked, and I don't know if the developers answered, he mentioned conditions in setback regarding mature trees densely, increased pad height. And also in the compromise document that you provided, there was a reference to 6-foot fences to block headlights at the end of those driveways.
So that was actually, that's when there were parking spots at the end there, and those have been
That eliminated
eliminated.
that need.
Yep.
Okay. But you can assure me that everything else in that list, I think there were 5, 6 items are going to be met to the letter.
Not exactly. I mean, back to the 3-foot grade, if we did that, you'd have some very upset residents, because it's not going to drain. There's been a considerable amount of effort put into this by our civil team. As you can imagine, we are taking in, I'd have to get the civil up here, but the amount of water that comes from the west, from the south is incredible, incredible. And if we don't, if we brought it down, we'd have a whole different ballgame to play with. So we're trying to get as close to original grade as possible, to our best of our ability to maintain good drainage.
And I'm just going to close with a sneak in a comment in the question period that it just sticks in my craw. That in your presentation, it said that in response, you had increased the setback. And I just want to set for the record, the setback was supposed to be 100 feet. That's what the residents in Westminster expected probably when they bought the house. That's what the comp plan says. That's what the PUD says. So you actually went back from, I think, from 20 feet to 50 feet under pressure from the residents. And it just irritates me that we have rules and then people come in and just push to the edge and we have to force them back. And I just wish developers, when they come in, would respect those rules because they're important to the residents. When they bought those houses, I'm sure they expected 100 feet and they're getting 50. And I agree, I appreciate, respect what Mr. LaBerge has done, and his neighbors have been very responsible, and I appreciate they offered a compromise. But we really shouldn't have to have such community angst when these developments come in if people would just observe the longstanding rules that were there. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
I just had one question remaining about the IGA between Broomfield and Westminster. I had similar concerns that Councilmember Hinkle asked about with if the coordination was going well between Broomfield and Westminster as far as the widening of the road. The only other question I had was, how did the conclusion come to be that Broomfield needs to guarantee a 6% annual return over 8 years to Westminster? Is that, I don't recall approving a agreement like this before, but maybe I'm wrong.
So
To have
this
something to
was a
compare to.
request, this was a request made by Westminster because the project is not in their 5-year CIP plan at this time. So they are anticipating constructing it starting at the 6-year point potentially or further into the future. They wanted to have some reassurance that the funds that they would be getting would account for potential inflation. And I did get some additional information. We have an engineer listening somewhere who messaged me. So traffic standards for road expansion are an industry standard. So we may not have the same exact trigger as Westminster for when the road expansion needs to be built, but they'll be pretty similar traffic count wise.
Okay. So Westminster asked for a 6% annual rate of return. And we said yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other first round comments? People who have not asked questions yet? Yes. Councilmember Henkel, can you remove yours because you've already spoken and it messes up the numbering, as you can see. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Xiao.
Thank you. I was looking through all my notes to make sure I didn't have any additional questions. I do have one. Just wanted to clarify on the large grass area on the east side of the southern development. Is that for drainage? On this map right here, it's that top or kind of right-hand corner right underneath the landscape buffer at Lurk Hearing. And it's that long grass area right there along the road. Correct, right there.
So yeah, that's a
all for
swale for all
drainage.
for drainage. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I mean, is that just regular turf grass or, I mean, is it usable space? I mean,
No, it's not. With the amount of water that's coming from essentially the dog park north, that all flows to us.
Okay, okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Yep.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other first round questions from council? Folks online? Well, I have one. So can you possibly explain to me how challenging the site has been drainage wise? Because I've heard this has been a problematic site for ages, which is why it's sat for so long. Can you please elaborate a little bit more on those challenges with regards to the grading?
Yeah.
And why you have to have your own lift station?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll break it into three components. The first component is the 40 to 50,000 square yards of dirt that's been placed there for us to deal with. That has caused issues already for some of the Westminster residents. That's problem one. Problem two, we keep talking about the amount of water that flows either through our site coming from the west or south, coming from the south. We also have Walnut Creek to the north of our north parcel, which has to account for the 100-year flood components and all of the work that our team has done to eliminate any kind of or any kind of traffic in that area so that we can do essentially a no rise letter where we're not changing that. And then unfortunately, to your last point, the tie-in, the sewer manhole for this property is on the northwest corner of the south parcel, which happens to also be at the highest elevation of this entire project, hence a lift station. Even with, I think just confirm, there's actually a City of Westminster sewer pipe that goes right through our property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I
So
know
just a few of the
many challenges.
many challenges of this. You guys want to add anything to that? Okay, we could be here all night,
I know.
but yeah,
Thank you, Mr.
you're welcome.
Tooman.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to our second round. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you. I apologize. I meant to bring up the housing issues as well, but I just have a different take. I think we have to revisit our IHO just to make sure we're hitting family units too. I know we have a lot of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom, and we just saw a lot go up in Interlochen as well.
This is still questions.
And this is still questions. So my question is, I have to lead up to it, and I don't want to ask it out of the blue. Have you guys considered the 3 bedrooms?
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jesse Truman. I am the president of TSC Capital Partners, and I'm also a Broomfield resident. So just wanted to let you guys all know that this is a project that's near and dear to all of our hearts, and this is in my backyard as well. So not literally, but I'm close. So to your point, we've been doing residential real estate development for the last 15 years, from Denver to Boulder, anything in between. Right now, there is, some of our current projects have been trying to sell. If it's, right now, the current market, there are not a ton of buyers that are looking for bigger units. The last 2 projects that we've sold, the 1-bedrooms have flown off the market. The 2-bedrooms have really struggled, and there's very to little no interest for 3-bedroom units that we've seen. Now, we're still providing some 3-bedroom units in this. I think each building has 1, studio, 3 2-bedroom units, and then there is a 3-bedroom unit that has the potential to almost have kind of a lock off that can help a lot of different family situations out. So it's just kind of been our current experience with what's been going on in the market and affordable issues and current trends and younger people. It's the bigger the unit, the harder it is to sell. And we're just not having that demand that we're seeing in the market right now.
So if you make it affordable as part of that plan, would it be more marketable, do you think?
Well, as far as a 3-bedroom unit, you mean, or?
Yeah, because I
or-
noticed there's no 3 bedrooms as the affordable part of it.
Again, it's really, we've worked with Jeff quite a bit on massaging on that. We've tried to make the affordable units be as close as possible to kind of being in the same ratios of what we're building. The 3-bedroom units would be very challenging to pull off, to be transparent. You know, if we're doing 9 units, to get them to into the price point that it's going to qualify for these, you know, 90% AMI units. You know, I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but, you know, we're probably going to eat at least, I would say, $1 million to $1.5 million to make that happen. If we were to start throwing in 3-bedroom units into that mix, it's going to get us to a point where it's almost not economically viable. You know, we have to make some profit, and that would really make it a challenge for us to pull this project off if we start talking about that.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, if I could just add a little bit of perspective. So when we revised the IHO, one of the things that we were in the midst of was the market responding to the opportunities for the Parrot homes up in the northeast part of the city. So the Leonard project, if you recall. One of the most difficult things we had in working with them was getting, it will seem backwards, but it's absolutely true, is people qualified to be able to get the mortgage. So being able to move through the financial markets as the buyers. So that was one of the reasons why we worked with the developers, multiple developers, to understand what was going on, and actually worked with banks too, to try to figure out how to make sure that when we were providing units for sale, that they could actually be captured and occupied. Because the last thing anybody wants is a vacant unit sitting there that's income restricted. So that's why we went to the 90%, in part was because that way we could get to qualified buyers and be able to get them into a place where they could take mortgages and take that. So that was part of it. I want to just finish with 2 points just on that. As you all know, we will be coming back sometime in roughly a year to a little bit more. I don't want to speak necessarily for that work plan yet, but the schedule was for us to come back with an IHO look and to see if that was something that needed to be looked at again. The orientation of council at that time was we want units more than we want cash in lieu. So that's what some of these changes were all focused on. Was it's one thing to get the developers to do certain things, and I can respect the fact that it may have been a greater drag on the development, but that wasn't our concern. Our concern is getting people into it that can be qualified to be able to buy those units. And so that's where it's a little bit of a push and pull, and we'll go into greater detail on that when we do come back with updates around housing or the IHO in the future.
Gotcha. That actually makes a lot of sense, and I didn't think about that. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any other council member questions? All right, seeing no further questions. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-158. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Resolution number 2024-158, approving the Great Western Park Planned Unit Development Plan Amendment number 6 and Great Western Park filing number 7, lots 1 and 2, Village of Westview, final plat, site development plan, and comprehensive plan amendment.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Leslie.
I move the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Nguyen.
I second this motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I don't see any discussion. If anybody has their hand up on Zoom, I can't see it.
Point of order, Mayor, I do have my hand raised.
All right, we'll go to Councilmember Ward, then Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say I'm sorry to the Skystone residents that I am not in person. I am in Tampa for the National League of Cities Annual City Summit Conference. But I want to express my great appreciation for the developers in taking the time to work with Skystone community and the residents in Westminster / Jefferson County to come forward with a proposal that I think benefits everyone to the greatest extent that any proposal can. You've done tremendous work in addressing concerns. You've done tremendous work in involving the Skystone community who desperately needs some of these services. I mean, they can't go anywhere to get coffee without having to drive a couple miles at minimum, or get food or do anything. They are very much landlocked, and I appreciate you guys bringing this project forward. I think to some of the concerns I've heard about, housing and why we're only doing 1 or 2 bedrooms and there's 1 3-bedroom. I'd like to remind my council colleagues that our fastest growing population, not only in Broomfield, but the state of Colorado, is our senior population who do not need the same size units that maybe traditional families do. Even younger people are putting off having families till much later in life, or maybe not even having them at all, and will not need that space. So I think we need to look at who we're supposed to be trying to target. And for so long, we've built units that are targeting families. And then when they stop having families that are living with them, they no longer have a place to downsize to. And this particular development will allow us to, at least in some part, address that concern of being able to downsize or have, I hate to say starter homes because at these prices, they probably won't really be starter homes, but at least a first home for some people that can afford these home prices. It's not perfect, but I think it's the best we can do given the situation that this particular parcel is in. So I will be supporting this, and I urge my council colleagues to support the project. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Next is Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So sometimes when a development doesn't move forward, I always wonder if the development will come back. And if it does, will that project continue to improve? This project has continued to improve. I'm happy to see this in front of us today. Thank you to the developers, the community for working together to find a project that's desirable and will benefit the Broomfield and even Westminster communities. The attached for sale condo, single family residential, this is a great need for our community. This is something that across all of Colorado is talked about that is a needed product. So I'm happy to see that this is coming to fruition. The Pickle Brewski, this is a great attraction, I think, for the Broomfield community. This is an area, as Councilmember Ward noted, that there is a community hub that could be, really galvanized in this area. And I think that Pickle Brewski really contributes to that galvanization of this community down in this area. So I look forward to seeing this development come forward. I look forward to supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's been nice to see this come back and have everyone kind of kumbaya and also continuing to listen. So I do want to say I support this. I also want the caveat of also keeping them engaged. So it's one thing to take us this far. I think we're still in this relay race and then finishing it. And it's just ensuring that we're listening to our residents. And if there's any, traffic concerns or anything like that, especially during construction too, we could have soil concerns or whatnot. That we're just keep that communication open. And then also between Broomfield and Westminster. So I want to make sure our staff is really keeping good communication going as far as traffic goes in the area as well. So I support this and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Any other discussion from council? Well, I would just like to thank Mr. Miles, Mr. Tiemann, and the entire team and our staff for persevering through a very challenging parcel. I think many developers would have walked away once you start uncovering the next, peeling back the onion, as we say. So I applaud you for your fortitude in not giving up. And for everybody who got it to this point. I'm very excited about it. Something we don't talk about much in the affordable housing world is that missing middle housing. Mr. Romine, Sharon Tessier from our housing department, and myself attended a Future Housing Coalition workshop last week. And it is the missing middle for folks in that 70 to 100% AMI range. So it is a much needed income aligned unit. Like we have moved away from affordable because affordable is a relative term. And what's affordable to one isn't necessarily affordable to another. So I appreciate this new product and all the amenities. It checks all the boxes for me, even though I probably won't get to vote on it, but I just wanted to say thank you. And so now, no further discussion. We'll move forward to the vote on resolution number 2024-158. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marshallson, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
You, Councilmember Ward, please state your vote verbally.
An enthusiastic yes.
Thank you. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. Thank you so much. But we're not done. We have to vote on the IGA with Westminster. So next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2024-163, the IGA with Westminster. Will the clerk please read the proposed resolution by title?
Resolution number 2024-163, approving an intergovernmental agreement between Broomfield and the city of Westminster relating to Village of Westview Sims Street improvement, cash in lieu of payment.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Wynn.
I make this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Don't see any online. Speak now. All right. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on resolution number 2024-163. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marshallson, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Councilmember Delgadillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Thank you. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That also passes unanimously. Congratulations. The last item for Westview, there's still one more. The last item for Westview is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2259. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2259, approving a sales and use tax reimbursement agreement for the Village of Westview.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading and order published by title? Councilmember Wynn.
I make this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Last call. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2259. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marshallson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Delgadillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Thank you all. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That also passes unanimously. Now we're done. So thank you all very much. On that note, we're going to go ahead and take our 8 p.m. Recess for 10 minutes. So we'll be back at 8:23. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to resume our council meeting, and we last left off on item 7C. The next item this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance 2256, approving a reimbursement agreement for funds related to the Nissen Channel. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And introducing us to a very brief presentation, given it's the second reading, is Mr. Romine.
Oh my gosh, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, I had so many cool slides that I just have to wipe out. I'm so sorry. They were colorful too. In all seriousness, I'm joined here tonight by Carl Front, who's from the city attorney's office, as well as Katie Allen, who's the city engineer. So she'll be talking if there's any questions about the technical items related to the channel improvements. Real briefly, next slide, please. So this is a very similar presentation, so I'm not going to go through it very much. So again, it's a two-pronged thing going on here. We have the phase one of the channel improvement, which is the flood district's primary project for this area. It is reducing and creating, overcoming the flood risk to life as well as the property damage. So that's the real purpose. Underneath it, though, is a development that will be occurring in between Perry Street in Lowell, and that development is being brought forward. It's in the future by Wasatch Residential Group, and we have talked about that in a concept review previously. It's planned to be a primarily residential with some commercial coming in. More information on that as we move forward in the future. We have talked to the developer obviously extensively. In order to move that project forward, whether it's be now or in the future, those channel improvements are going to be critical for them also, because it does create and solve some of the land issues related to it. Next slide, please. This is the actual project that is underway in the purple and blue. As many of you know, the contractor is already down there and doing the work. So this is figuring out how we pay for it effectively. Next slide, please. This is the go forward approach is the way that these work is 50% of the funds will be provided by the Mile High Flood District, and the other 50% will be provided by the city and county of Broomfield as well as the property owners. Wasatch is providing and donated the right of way of land and the easements in that area. So that is part of their contributions. But in addition to that, they'll be bringing $1 million toward the project itself. And then they are providing a $1 million advance to the city and county of Broomfield to make this work go now. It is moving forward, as I mentioned already, under construction, and will be completed, at which point the developer would be able to develop the site once it's approved by city council. So your approval of this does not tie your hands to what your consideration of their future development plan will be coming forward. And I think it's very important for you to know that. We have repeatedly said that to the development group also. So they recognize these are two different decisions, but they feel very positive about their development and hope at that point that you will consider it in the same manner that they're offering it. Nevertheless, those are two completely different decisions. Next slide, please. Getting back to the reimbursement agreement, which is the specific thing you're doing tonight. It has been reviewed, as you know, on first reading. At the same time, Borough has approved their participation into it because they're acting as a bit of the fiscal agent within the relationship. This is a URA area, and so that's part of the reason why Borough is involved. They do not require that organization doesn't require a second reading for what they need to do on this particular item. And so therefore it's only a single reading for them and two readings for you, because it is this obligation that we're bringing forward. In brief, the $1 million advance will be received upon approval of this. At that point, then the interest rate begins to trigger, and it's about 8%, as we mentioned previously. Over term, as one of the questions raised by council previously was, what do we expect the interest payment to be to total up over the period of time? And in the work that we've done, we've estimated to be about $40,000 to $50,000 in total. And so that's because as soon as they start moving forward on a development, when they start moving on a development, then at that point, the use tax will be applied and that will buy down a significant portion of the $1 million advance. And then the remaining portion will be carried through sales tax through property tax reimbursement. I apologize, through property tax reimbursement. And so those are that. The obligation will be completed at the end of the full payment. So the final $1 million plus any interest earned. And we anticipate that to be 3 to 4 years total over term. So that's effectively where we are. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I would note one other thing that was asked of staff previously in the last presentation was what is the amount of CIP that's coming into this project and how much and how is that allocated? So we have done that, and that was added into the memo, as you noted, with the specific amounts and how that's being paid for. So this is normally a CIP funded, and we're taking the advance to help offset some of that timing of that. So at that, I'm happy to answer any questions, as is Katie and Carl. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romine. We'll now proceed with public comment, starting with in person. If you'd like to be heard on this topic, please come to the podium. State your name and neighborhood for the record. No, full house. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I spoke on this at first reading, and particularly on the 8% interest rate. It seemed very outrageous that we were paying that much. Trusting Mr. Romine's numbers, 40 to 50,000, that's actually around a 2% interest rate if you're doing simple interest rate calculations. So my only concern still with this is if Wasatch Residential Group doesn't move forward, we are still on the hook for 8%, which is going to be around $200 and some $1,000 if you were to do simple interest calculations over the 3 to 4 years, which could actually be longer because there is no limit on this as far as I can tell. It's just till the full amount is paid. I still don't understand why we couldn't negotiate that down. Wasatch Residential Group is getting a very huge improvement on the property. Broomfield's getting something out of it too, so I have no problem with us paying the $1 million for the work. But that we have to then pay an 8% interest on a loan that is allowing them to not pay flood insurance for the life of their buildings seems like that's kind of adding insult to injury. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on to council questions. Any questions from council? Are you trying to hit your button? Oh, there you go. Councilmember Lim.
I'll bite. Would you please address Mr. Ewald's question? Since I was the one the last time you asked about the 6% interest, the 8% interest me too.
Absolutely. So Mayor Pro Tem, council members. So as many of you know, we tend not to borrow in $1 million increments. We tend to borrow in much higher increments. Most governments do when you borrow. And so therefore you have obviously issuance cost to bonds and other things. Right now, the most recent presentations we're hearing about what would be called C bonds, which are those that are not backed up with actual general fund revenue and or not with development coming forward yet. They tend to be in the 7.5% to 8.5% range. And that's what we've been seeing on the C bonds that have been coming through from metro districts as well as others. And so those that aren't secured, that tends to be the interest rate that is being required and being paid. So we actually are matching up to the market specifically there. At the same time, and I think it's fair to say, obviously, Wasatch is a smart, strong, fiscally development company. They recognize that why would they put $1 million out and $1 million advance to the city and county of Broomfield unless they were intending to go forward. And then finally, to add to the third point of that, just to help you understand, and as a reminder around that development. So right now, Wasatch Group does have approvals and could move forward on the north side of the property, which is roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of the property. They can move forward immediately on a residential development of scale, which would likely fund the entire thing again through the use taxes and through the property taxes. And so the true part of where we are with Wasatch, going back to that concept review, is exactly what do we want on the south side of the drainage, north side of 120th. So that's really what's in play, and that's what council pushed back on during the concept review, if you recall. but what can be developed on the north side, they can move forward tomorrow. And so that does mitigate some of the risk from the standpoint of why we don't think the interest will be paid, at $200,000-$300,000. And that's the best I can answer from the standpoint of the characteristics of the development, the characteristics of the bond markets, which we can't go to for $1 million, but nevertheless, that's what the rates are right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? There being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2256. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2256, approving a reimbursement agreement for funds advanced for drainage improvements to Neeson Channel.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading and ordered published by title? Councilmember Leslie?
Move to approve the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Nguyen?
I second this motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2256. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marsh-Holshan, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo, please state your vote
Yeah.
verbally. And
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward, please state your vote verbally.
Yes.
Thank you. All council members have entered their vote and the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. The next item, thank you, Mr. Romine and Katie and Carl. All right, next item this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of an ordinance related to Broomfield's withdrawal from the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority. I'll declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Nancy Rogers, the city and county attorney. Here with me tonight is Pat Gilbert, the deputy city and county attorney, and Joel Heine, also one of the attorneys from our office. Next slide. So this tonight would be the final step in a process that started actually even before December of 2018, but that's what I'll pick up the timeline. So starting in December of 18 and throughout 19, City Council held multiple meetings discussing the Parkway and the Parkway Authority's request for $2.5 million from each party that year. The council received comments from both people in favor and opposed to the Parkway. In early 2019, Broomfield City Council requested that the authority conduct soil sampling along the right-of-way that was adjacent to Rocky Flats where a portion of this Parkway would be built. In mid-2019, one of those soil samples came back at, Joel, I didn't get the words down, 264 picocuries per, I always stumble over that, thank you. You can go home. That was great. You've done your duty. That was awesome. I definitely appreciate that you've offered a lot more than that. I don't mean to diminish that. Plutonium, that was more than 5 times. That is more than 5 times the remediation standard from the Rocky Flats closure plan as stated in the closing legacy report. And this was of great concern to the council that was seated at the time, to many of the community members. So the location of that contamination, the budget issues, and the feedback that council had received from community members all caused council to reconsider its participation. And in February of 2020, council issued a notice of intent to withdraw from the JPPHA, from the Parkway Authority, and to leave that IGA and leave that group project. Next slide. Tonight, we're talking about the second step. It's ordinance 2251. It's conveyance of the property. Council will recall at a meeting on October 8th, council approves, subject to approval of this ordinance, a resolution that would approve the withdrawal agreement. Next slide. Next slide. Council issued its notice of intent to withdraw from the Parkway in 2020, and we spent the intervening years negotiating what the terms of that withdrawal will be. As you might recall from our previous meetings, all the parties need to unanimously agree to these terms. So Arvada and Jeffco couldn't impose something as the majority members upon Broomfield, and Broomfield could not just stalwart on certain terms. We needed to come to what we believe would be an agreement that all board members of the Parkway, which are made up of those three entities, would agree to. So there was the delayed transfer of the right-of-way, Broomfield's land that would be a portion of the Parkway, a payment of $636,000, an agreement to utilize good faith on permitting and approvals, which means they cannot be arbitrary or capricious, which is a standard that council is familiar with because it's a standard that applies to almost all your decisions. Environmental mitigation, there's a specific requirements in an exhibit that list out the environmental requirements in this agreement. And then the board would agree to amend all the pertinent contracts, which includes a reimbursement agreement where Broomfield, should the Parkway get built, should it end up being profitable from tollways, Broomfield could get reimbursed for all the money that Broomfield has contributed to this project up to the date of this withdrawal. And this would include a mutual release of claims arising from Broomfield's withdrawal. As council recalls, Arvada and Jeffco sued to sort of, on this dispute, to sort of bring it to a head and have a judge rule on it. The judge dismissed that case as not ripe and said, parties, see what you can work out and come to me when you actually have a dispute that has been voted on by the board where you've been rejected. Broomfield's attempt to withdraw has been rejected. This agreement would release all those claims. Each party says, we're done making any sort of, we won't sue you before your notice of intent to withdraw. We will release everything we tried to assert in that lawsuit against you in 2021. Next slide. As a reminder for council and the public, this is a general drawing of where the Jefferson Parkway is proposed to go. We don't really know the viability of a project. This is a fairly old drawing. Parties on the other sides have indicated they do intend to move forward with this project. They will do that if council approves this ordinance without Broomfield though. Next slide. For Broomfield specifically, the property that we're talking about is in the yellow area. And you can see the sort of black drawing is where the road would be built, should it be built in Broomfield. That's the right of way that is subject to this delayed conveyance. Next slide. This land was deeded in 1985 for open space, but also for a variety of other uses. It can be used as open space, but it also can be used for a lot of other common uses, including parks, recreational needs, highway, street, roads, right-of-way, public utilities. I bring that up because there could be a belief that this is protected open space land, and it's not that type of protected open space land that's in our charter. Right, next slide. So the timeline, our council on October 8 voted on resolution approving the withdrawal agreement and exhibits, subject to approval of the ordinance 2251. Ordinance 2251 is the land conveyance. We have to do that by ordinance since it is property. In October and November, Arvada and Jeffco have considered the same items. Arvada had to do its first reading. It has its second reading next week. Jeffco has already approved the withdrawal agreement and all the terms. The JPPHA board will meet on December 19th, made up of representatives from each of the three entities, and that's where they will vote on this withdrawal agreement, and we expect the representatives to vote in line with what their communities voted. The effective date for this agreement is the date of the last signature. So the effective date when Broomfield is out of the Parkway will be that December date after we start getting signatures after the board approval. Next slide. So Mayor, we're here for any questions that council might have.
Thank you very much. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard, please come up to the podium.
Doxy Jula Lockmore. Like I've said many times in the past, the subject is really into my heart. I hate that area. It's caused a lot of pain. It's It's caused a lot of death. And as far as Broomfield is concerned, I'm happy we are going to be, God, I hope we're going to be out of it. That's, if anybody can text me when this is all final, I would like that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Questions from council are next. Any questions from council? Anybody online? No questions? Okay. Good. There being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2251. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2251, authorizing the delayed conveyance of property via a special warranty deed and subject to the terms of an escrow agreement to Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading and order published by title? Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Leslie.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I have one thing to say. Thank you. So happy to finally be closing this chapter after so many years. And, we'll make sure and send out a press release too. So everybody will
Mayor,
know. Yes.
Could I add on to that? Thank
Of
you. I
course,
really
Ms.
want to
Rogers.
recognize, I will give Joel Heine some props as a new lawyer to our office. He jumped into this very complex dispute with both feet. And thank you for all your research. And I really want to thank Pat Gilbert, who has been dealing with this matter from a legal perspective since before I was here with Sean Sullivan. And then I'd also like to thank Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf and council members for their support and patience on this. This was very complicated and has taken a long time, but I think as we've seen by your pending vote right now, with the votes of our neighbors, this is a really positive resolution. So thank you. Thank you both for all your work.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2251. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marshallshin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo, your vote?
Yes.
And Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Thank you all. Council members have entered their vote. And that passes unanimously. Slow clap. Our last item this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second reading of a proposed ordinance related to occupancy restrictions based on familial status. I'll declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Our planning manager is going to walk us through, I'm not even going to say very anymore, it's such an overused word, but a brief presentation as it is second reading. Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. Brandon Rowe, Planning Manager with Community Development. Could I get the next slide, please? This evening's last item is the second reading for ordinance number 2241 related to residential occupancy regulations. As Ms. Hoffman referenced, staff provided a full presentation during the first reading earlier this fall. So tonight's presentation, the term I will use will be concise. If approved on second reading, this ordinance would change residential unit language to remove familial references. So that means instead of single family residential, it'd just be single unit residential. Same for multifamily to multi-unit. It would also clarify that group living homes are permitted uses where single unit dwellings are permitted. And then the final element that would be enacted if this ordinance is adopted is the removal of familial occupancy limitations for residential dwellings. So Broomfield currently limits residential units to a maximum of 3 unrelated adults or a unlimited number of related individuals through blood, marriage, adoption. This ordinance would remove those limitations and would instead limit occupancy based on established life safety standards and water and sewer for septic tanks, things of that nature, as opposed to family relations. So I said it would be a concise presentation. That concludes my presentation this evening for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We'll now proceed with public comments. If anyone would like to be heard on this item, now's the time. I'll check online. We didn't really have much action there. All right, then council questions. Any council questions? Not seeing any of those either. There being no further questions, what? Oh, Councilmember Lim, I didn't even look there. I was looking for the Zoom. My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay.
Councilmember.
I just had a question. Do we, I know this is coming down from the state, so, I mean, I don't think they anticipated any kind of education on this. I mean, do we know, did we ever have inquiries where people asked what our residency occupancy was, and we quoted, we used the familial line, and they won't know that they can do something different now? Do we have any idea of that?
Council member, that's a great question. So the planners do regularly get phone calls and inquiries regarding how many people can rent a home. Historically, we have referenced code, which was the limitation based on familial relationships. Part of the education would be that we would, during planner on call, be able to explain that that is now not limited to family relationships. There's also the potential that we could add a note on the planning website. We have recent ordinances, a whole page that we talk about code changes, and we'll be sure to add that so it'll make that clear.
That would be great. I mean, this is meant to, if that can be done, this is meant to address affordability in housing. So this is one way to do it. So,
absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council? Being no further questions, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2241. Will the clerk please read the proposed ordinance by title?
Ordinance.
Oh, I didn't, and the public hearing's closed.
Ordinance number 2241 to amend the Broomfield Municipal Code, Title 17, to remove occupancy restrictions based on familial status.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading and order published in full? Councilmember Wynn.
I make this motion.
Holding up the left side. And is there a second? Councilmember Hinkle. Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll move forward to the vote on ordinance number 2241. Council, please cast your vote electronically. Councilmember Marsh Holshan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Delgadillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All council members have entered their vote. I have two. I don't really vote, but I have to hit a button. Can you do that for me? Oh, there we go. And the results will be displayed on the screen. That passes unanimously. There are no requests for future action this evening, but is there any other business to come before the council from my council colleagues or staff? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to go back to the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway meeting. Thank you all for your support. Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff for your support. The meeting I believe will be all virtual on Thursday, December 19th. So I look forward to voting for Broomfield's withdrawal at that meeting. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for your service. All right, then, there being no further business, the business meeting is adjourned. Council will convene for executive session immediately following this meeting. Thank you very much.
The Access Live event has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.